attendee wanting to know, has the pandemic really changed how jurors evaluate a case? And do you think, if so, that pendulum will swing back to the way it used to be over time? And again, a question for all of you. Maurice, would you like to start with that one?
I think that the pandemic itself, I mean, I interpret the question as being directed at whether or not things arising, issues and views arising from the pandemic will have made permanent change on the way jurors view cases. And that to me are things like concerns about health or, being remote or vaccines or masks or all of that. And my view is eventually, whether it's 2 years or 4 years or 6 years or 10 years, assuming no continued pandemic of new or same kind, it will go back. And it will go back because, unfortunately, we all have relatively short memories. We've been through a big pandemic in the turn of the last century. Everybody seems to have forgotten that pandemic when this one arose until there were articles about it. And so I think it will go back. Having said that, in the immediate future, I think it has changed things. And it's wrapped up in some of these hot button issues and wrapped up in what people expect in terms of respect for their own schedules. That's the main thing, right? I mean, the main issue, the jurors have said they're not coming in to jury service because they feel like there's a risk that they may get COVID.
Adam, thoughts from you?
No, I think that these guys covered it pretty well.
Great, thank you so much. And Keith, any thoughts from you before we move on to another question?
I think one thing that's changed and might not change back is just the heightened expectation jurors have for counsel and trial presentation. I think there's less patience, more. I would say more desire for among the veneer for the attorneys to really work hard to try to reach the jury, to communicate the case message, to teach in ways that they find accessible, and less patience for traditional just talking to them about the case. They want to really be involved and engaged, and I think that's something that is a carryover from being online for so long for so many people.
Thank you so much. An attendee coming in here with a question now. Again, this goes back to the virtual court hearings. If these do continue, and it looks like you're all saying even moving out of this, we could still see virtual court hearings continue, how then are privacy and confidentiality issues being addressed? What steps can be taken and are being taken? Maurice, would you like to start?
So in terms of virtual hearings and confidentiality, I assume that the concern arises from basically data hacks into either hearings or things that are normally under seal, or the simple fact that recordings are often made of, and for example, recording is made of this today, right? That testimony or presentations on Zoom are actually recorded and are accessible. Look, it's a significant concern, actually, a very, very significant concern. And I think one that is still being addressed in the right way. There are many, many things that happen in traditional trials which are under seal. Nobody's in the courtroom. There's a transcript. The transcript that gets destroyed, and that's the end of it. But where you have a video presentation, it is subject to being hacked one way or another. And of course, trials and arbitrations involve the most sensitive information you can imagine. So I think that remains a risk. I think there hasn't, to my knowledge, been an enormous issue that at least I've been aware of that has come out in the public. That doesn't mean it hasn't happened. But I think it is something important to keep an eye on and needs to be addressed.
Thank you so much. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, I can jump in on that. We actually ran into this early on. I was in a trial in King County in 2020, And they did have a data breach. They had hackers jump into one of these proceedings and all sorts of craziness happened. But most courts are using an encrypted version of Zoom. You know, we all are typically using some form of Zoom, but there is a, I think it's zoom.gov. It's a very specific version where there's a fair amount of encryption in place. And I think most courts have gotten really smart and used to using the technology. The issue that we saw early on was where the courts were asking bailiffs to become virtual bailiffs. And that assumed that they had a fair amount of IT knowledge, which they didn't. So I think early on we saw a little bit about that, but I've not seen that be the issue that it was in the early days of 2020.